Alright, so first of all, what a quarterfinal slate we just went through. 3 out of 4 matches, 5 sets. The one that didn't go 5 sets ended up being just a supreme performance out of Stefanos Tsitsipas. And while all these 5-setters you wouldn't classify under epics, there's no doubt they were captivating for a wide variety of reasons. And yeah, I just want to talk about them. They all really garner it, and I, for one, watched 3 out of the 4 in relatively close detail. The one I didn't watch live was Berrettini Monfils. Courtesy of the cardiac arrest Rafa Nadal gave to me until 4 a.m. my time, and probably to all his fans around the globe. And considering we're already talking about it, and that was the first quarterfinal played on the men's side, I'm just going to talk about that match in particular first. I certainly was wary of the threat that Denis Shapovalov played to Rafa. Certainly, if he honed in the way he did the last 2 matches, he could really beat anybody you put up against him. And we did see flashes of that type of play during this match, but not nearly enough. And I am totally willing to say that Rafa got lucky to make it into the semifinals, because for anybody that actually watched this match, Rafael Nadal for the good part of the last 3 sets of this match was right there for the taking. Obviously, this match started out with perhaps Nadal's best set of the tournament, I would say so. He was pretty much flawless in that opening set. Got the one break early on a poor Shapovalov service game and rode that out to the finish line. Very, very clean set out of Rafa. But from that point on, the Nadal level never hit that sky high ever again for the rest of the match. I mean, I believe Rafa had to save break points midway through the second. And when that happened, I thought to myself, like, wow, I mean, he has come down considerably from the first set, and Denis just doesn't have it today to make him pay, to make him just have to earn it, because he was just spraying errors, he wasn't returning well. Rafa again was able to snag a break and ride that out to a 2-set-to-love lead. But if it wasn't clear that Nadal was slowing down in the second set, it definitely was by the third. And what I was saying with the Denis not having it early, well, it's not really that he pulled back, but those huge cuts he was taking at the ball started going in way more often, way more consistently. And Rafa just did not have it in him to chase those balls down. I think on the ESPN broadcast they said it was 91 degrees and he was clearly struggling with the heat. And by early 4th set, I'm not going to lie, I really thought history was about to repeat itself for the 2nd straight year at the Aussie Open quarter, and that again he was going to lose a 2-set-to-love lead. It really just seemed inevitable there. So in retrospect, you'd probably ask what changed in the 5th if things were looking that dire. And I would say this. Rafael Nadal has clearly put in some work on his serve in the off-season and the time he had to prep for this tournament, and while it has resulted in more double faults, particularly in this match at some pretty bad times, it definitely came to the rescue there in that 5th set. He was able to earn a lot of free points in that set, and then on the other side of the net, once this match seemed to be in his grasp and victory was within sight, Denis Shapovalov played just an atrocious, horrendous abomination of a 5th set. Yes, it's very impressive that the 35-year-old that seemed to be on his last legs in this match was able to find it within himself to keep fighting, as he always does if you've followed Rafa Nadal's career. But there is no denying that he was let off the hook here. Shapovalov really did nothing to try and take advantage of an ailing opponent there. Just buckets of unforced errors in that 5th set, and you could see why he was so frustrated at the end of the match. He smashed his racket after losing match point, and you can't entirely blame him. I think he knows he let Rafa off the hook. If he had pulled back even in the slightest and just tried to make Nadal play, I am almost positive he would have come out the victor. And I remember this video I made back in Wimbledon when Shapovalov choked against Djokovic in the opening 2 sets of the Wimbledon semifinal. Well, he did the exact same thing here in the 5th set. And this is really one of those matches that best showcases what I was talking about in that video, because the crux of that Next Gen Pisses Me Off video was just that these guys are right there for the taking. But aside from Medvedev and Berrettini, you really cannot trust any of these guys upstairs. Now, ever since that video, a lot of these younger guys have done some very impressive things. They've done a lot of things that garner a lot of respect, and it's never going to be fair to stack them or anybody up against the big three, but unfortunately for them, they get the twilight years of Djokovic and Nadal, and clearly the gap in mental strength, there remains an ocean between them. And this match right here is just, you gotta look in the mirror if you're Shapovalov. Rafa was let off the hook, and the Nadal fan in me says, I don't care, I will take it, and he lives to fight another day. That is that. I'm not going to go into Monfils Berrettini. I really didn't watch the match, and I honestly don't have a great feel for how that match went down. Tsitsipas Sinner was really built up to be something great. A lot of people picked Sinner, myself included, and we were dead wrong on that. I think at the end of my prediction for this matchup, I did say something along the lines of Tsitsipas has gotten through a lot of tough matches, put in a lot of scratchy performances, but he's come out the victor, and who knows, because of that, maybe his best stuff is right around the corner. And boy, did that end up manifesting itself here. From the first ball, pretty much, Stefanos Tsitsipas was razor sharp, and he never really wavered for the rest of the match. This was quite easily Steph's best match since Roland Garros last year, and it really came out of nowhere. Even if you had Tsitsipas winning this, I don't think anybody saw a performance like this coming. He pretty much rendered Jannik Sinner powerless on the day. The numbers for this match, I believe Tsitsipas only had 2 more winners than he did unforced errors, but they don't tell the full story at all. He was just flawless. Much cleaner performance than that winner to unforced error ratio would give you an idea of. On the other side of the net, I think Sinner underwhelmed in this match compared to what a lot of people thought he'd bring. His serve was under siege the whole match, and people have made a pretty big deal of how Sinner's serve to this point hasn't been what you would think for a guy his size, and that's definitely fair. He obviously has time to improve it, but it really hurt him here, and not only was the serve under fire, his returning really was not putting a dent in any of the Tsitsipas serve games. I don't recall Steph being under pressure all that much, don't even know if he even faced the break point, but I do remember several times where Sinner was given a half chance in those games, and several just missed returns or poor returns short in the box. Really just let Tsitsipas tee up that forehand all day, and it was a statement match really from Steph. Showed that he's back, and also that Jannik still has a decent ways to go before he's on that level of the heavyweights of the sport. And then the final quarterfinal between FAA and Daniil Medvedev. Straight off the bat, I've got to say, this was one of my favorite matches to watch, not featuring a big three player. It was so much fun. It was really high quality for the most part throughout, and without a doubt, this was the best match I've ever seen Felix Auger-Aliassime play by a long shot. I've said to this point, it's been baby steps. Maybe that was the case for last year, but I really underestimated the work he did at ATP Cup. I mean, I don't want to say totally dismissed it, but that 4-0 beating that he took to Medvedev, it really gave me cause to pause. But last night, that quarterfinal was one giant leap for sure for Felix Auger-Aliassime. I don't want to jump to the conclusion that that might be a springboard for greater things to come for Felix, but he's got to take just a world of positives from that match. In my opinion, Felix had stagnated a bit after he burst onto the scene in early 2019. I think the rest of that season and 2020, he stagnated, if not regressed a little even. And when he'd first burst onto the scene, I had held Felix the prospect in very high regard. I really thought this was going to be my favorite player after Rafa Nadal, but over that span where he kind of took a step back, I kind of had to back off that. And last night, really just a reminder of what a great talent Felix Auger-Aliassime is. And it's a learning experience for someone like me. I mean, the guy is still 21. He's still, relatively speaking, very, very young and green in his tennis career. He still has plenty of time to figure it out, and I think I lost sight of that a bit. But, I mean, last night was a reminder of why people had heralded the prospect that was Felix for so long, very, very early in his career. He was so good last night that for a good part of 3 sets, he was bossing Daniil Medvedev around. It wasn't until like the 4th or mid-4th that this match wasn't played on Felix's terms anymore. And even then, the critique on Felix has been that he should trust his legs more. He's not a bad mover at all. In fact, he's a very good one. He's very quick around the court. He can play defense, but oftentimes it just seemed like he was the one person that didn't know that and was just going for broke on way too many shots that he really had no business doing so. And while I'm not going to say that was completely gone last night, he was very, very disciplined. He had no problems really going toe-to-toe, rallying with Daniil Medvedev of all people, a guy right now in his physical prime who over the last couple of years has patented that human backboard style of play. And against most people, he's not the one that has to adjust, but in the latter portion of this match, it became Medvedev the one that had to take more chances, and he did. He knew that, because from that standpoint, Felix was making all the right calls. He has always had a terrific first serve. The second has been suspect at times, but for the most part, he did have a couple of untimely double faults, but for the most part, his serve held up. It didn't even hold up. Until the 5th set, his serve was in charge of this match. It really was just the full package of why so many people just believe in this guy's talent, and I really hope this is the start of things to come for Felix and something big. He can hold his head up high after this match. Fought till the very well, even though he was a bit tired in the 5th. He never let this match get away, even had a chance to extend it. He did everything you would have wanted to see from him and more. On the flip side, Daniil Medvedev, you just gotta tip your cap. Felix had chances throughout the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and I will say, aside from the 5th set break points, pretty much all of them, aside from those, I think for the most part, Medvedev saved all of those opportunities Felix had more than Felix lost them. He was very gutsy throughout this match. Lots of clutch play from both, honestly, but more so Medvedev. And I did mention that he went out of his comfort zone in this match from around mid-4th set-ish till the end of the match. Before then, he was kind of just letting himself be pushed around by Felix. He was very passive and making quite a few uncharacteristic, unforced errors, uncharacteristic, and untimely double faults, actually. But I think I've said this before, but this is the difference between Daniil Medvedev and a lot of his counterparts of his generation, is that when the chips are down, Medvedev is willing to go out of his comfort zone, and the thing is, most of the time, it works. It's been a trend ever since that summer of 2019, but when his back is against the wall, you oftentimes see him do stuff like coming into the net, serve and volleying more, going for broke on his forehand, and you see him make a lot of these just ridiculously difficult shots. It works. He had several big volley staves in this match, the quality of which are well above his norm. He's only an adequate volleyer at this point, but you wouldn't know it if you only saw that match. But at this point, you've got to get used to it. This is just textbook Daniil Medvedev. Whatever you think of his game style, you can't really deny a lot of his matches are very, very entertaining, and this will rank among the top. Medi just escapes by the skin of his teeth here, and he too lives to fight another day. And so we have Berrettini Nadal and Tsitsipas Medvedev for the right to play for the 2022 Australian Open title. I'm going to try to be as quick as I can with these predictions. Rafa, Berrettini, these two have only played once. That was at the 2019 US Open semifinals. Both of them are different players now. Berrettini obviously has come a long way, gotten much better, much more comfortable at the top of the game. Nadal, not as good as he was back then, but you can't really blame him for that. 2 more years of wear and tear, 2 more years of a couple more injuries added on. So that match probably gets thrown out the window when evaluating what's going to go down here. Obviously, the big elephant in the room, or the thing that probably sticks out the most, is the Berrettini backhand and how that's going to hold up against the Nadal forehand. Because I think everybody knows that once Rafa gets forehands, and if he does, he's just going to berate the hell out of that Berrettini backhand. And in my opinion, Nadal's ability to attack slices is second to none, and a very unique quality he has. So the slice backhand that Berrettini uses a lot, questionable as to how effective a play it'll be. But of course, I mean, everybody knows Berrettini's backhand is a drastically weaker wing. It's a matter of how difficult it's going to be to get there because his strengths are very strong. From his standpoint, he's obviously going to have to serve lights out. It's not going to be easy on 35-year-old Nadal if he's going to have to keep digging out the barrage of the Berrettini forehand in order to get to the backhand. But ultimately, with Berrettini's weaknesses being backhand and movement, I just think those are some of the worst shortcomings you would want to have going against Rafa Nadal. Fundamentally, on paper at least, this just seems to be a matchup that favors Rafa more so and by a pretty significant distance than what it is against Shapovalov. Oh, and yeah, we do have to talk about the fact that Rafa's endurance has noticeably dipped ever since he came back and tennis restarted in late 2020. But that's another part of this matchup I don't feel is going to get that physical. Obviously, Rafa was gassed in his last match, but that's something that was kind of out of his control, not really because he was worn down, more so just because of the conditions. And with 2 days off, I think he'll be just fine. In my opinion, Rafa has played well this tournament. Not even from the standards of coming off a break and doing it at 35 and coming off an injury, all that. Not even considering that. Just in a vacuum, I think Nadal has been good this tournament. Those last couple sets of the Shapovalov match are kind of a wash for me. In my opinion, Rafa's still capable at his best, even now, at producing that 2017 through 2019 best years of his post-prime type tennis when he's playing his best. It's just about sustaining it now, and that's not as reliable. We could see that result in some kind of dip like we saw in the third set of the Kachanov match, but Rafa has so many options to me in this matchup that it'll be easier to pick back up, and for that reason, I've got Rafa in 4. In the other semifinal, of course, we have Daniil Medvedev and Stefanos Tsitsipas, a rematch of last year's semifinal between the two. Obviously, everyone knows of their contentious history. That's always going to be a thing brought up, even though they seem to have ironed things out. But that aside, interestingly enough, when I bring up last year's semifinals, this time it seems the shoe is on the other foot. Stuff has totally flipped. Last year it was Tsitsipas coming off a grueling 5-set win where he came back 2 sets down to Rafa to make it to the semifinals. This year it is Daniil Medvedev who took almost 5 hours to rally 2 sets down to Felix Auger-Aliassime, heading in against a Tsitsipas that is relatively fresh, coming off by far his best performance in months. So that'll likely mean Tsitsipas is the fresher of the two, but I will say In the case of Daniil Medvedev, I don't think that's going to be that big a factor. The dude is in the prime of his career right now. I really don't think he's going to have all that many issues in bouncing back tonight. And once we get past that, we got to talk about how Daniil has obviously had the matchup advantage between these two. I do kind of dismiss last year's encounter between the two because Steph was just drained after that match against Rafa, so I don't really put much stock in that. I mean, basically, the way I see this match is, even in spite of the fact that Tsitsipas is probably fresher, the matchup being so decidedly in his favor, I think that Medvedev is still going to be considered the favorite here, but not as much so if you would have told me these two were going to play in the semifinals at the beginning of this tournament. Tsitsipas clearly went up several gears in his level in his last match. That's something I wouldn't have anticipated even before his last round, and definitely something to take into account. But also, Tsitsipas has become, over the last couple of years, a very reliable big match player. Barring him being drained along the lines of something like we saw last year, he's usually performed, and without being physically compromised and coming in confident now, I do think that Tsitsipas is going to put up a really good fight. I mean, last year when he beat Medvedev at the French Open, albeit Daniil's worst surface by far, had to be a confidence boost when going into a match against him again, especially to do it in straights. But if you've been paying attention to my picks and predictions this tournament, you would know that they have absolutely sucked. A lot of times that was because I went with my gut. I do think Tsitsipas is going to put up a very good fight here, but the matchup favors Medvedev, the court favors Medvedev, and even though throughout this tournament he hasn't looked quite at his fearsome best as he has for the better part of the last couple hardcourt majors, I'm still going to roll with Daniil Medvedev here, and I'm going to say he'll do it in 5. That'll do it for this video. In my opinion, the quarterfinals we got were absolutely electric. Everything I got to watch was a lot of fun, and those are my picks for who wins tonight's semifinals. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be much appreciated if you could drop a like on this video. It helps the video's performance a lot, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Thank you all again for watching. I appreciate it, and of course, I will see y'all in the next one.